Good morning. Welcome back. You're still watching DayBreak on this 20th day of April 2025. Jeffrey Wandeto is the Member of Parliament for Tetu constituency. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, viewers.
Nelson Koech is the Member of Parliament for Belgut constituency. He is also the chairperson of the Defence, Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Kenyans.
He just came back from China. He'll be telling us what he matters from there. Anthony Kibagend is the Member of Parliament for Kitutu Churches South constituency. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam, and good morning, Kenyans.
He also came back from somewhere. Where were you?
Somewhere.
No. There's a place. I saw some pictures somewhere. Which city was that?
It was a private visit.
Which city was that?
UAE.
UAE. Yes. Okay, karibu sana.
Yeah.
He is a country. Mheshimiwa Jane Kagiri, Member of Parliament for Laikipia constituency. Good morning.
Laikipia County. Good morning.
Okay.
Sam, and good morning, Kenyans.
Yeah.
And I just came back from Laikipia, in case you want to ask.
Okay. Mileage imeingia.
Itaingia.
Okay, all right. Now, this morning, the papers, 5 billion shilling a day debt stress for Ruto is the main story in the Daily Nation, talking about Kenya will this year pay 1.8 trillion shillings, over half of the country's budget, to its creditors, highlighting the growing burden of debt that has spiraled to 11 trillion shillings. And of course, giving the numbers ahead, as I had indicated earlier, from Mwai Kibaki, who left the country at 1.9 trillion shillings of debt. Uhuru Kenyatta left the country at 8.6 trillion shillings. William Ruto, 2.5 years later, is at 11 trillion shillings. And of course, this remains a big challenge for the government to finance programs, but also to continue servicing debt, and also informs the future of management of public affairs and the state of the economy. The president was in China last week and later headed to Rome for the funeral of the late Pope Francis. We'll be talking about the deals made in China. UDS tax evasion is the main story on the Standard, talking about, this is former SG, Cleophas Malala, who claims that the party has now been remitting resources or funds deducted for housing levy and pay-as-you-earn taxes on employees. Last year, these tax issues sparked protests by Gen Z, to which the government responded with excessive brutality. Is the country being governed by two sets of rules, reminiscent of George Orwell's famous novel, where some animals are more equal than others? Is a question the Standard is asking this morning. But also this week is an important one, because the ABC selection panel will be retreating, or has retreated, to go and analyze the interviews they conducted of 100 applicants for the commissioner jobs and 11 candidates for the position of chair. They were interviewed, and now it's time for the panel to come up with names. 11 names in total, 2 for chairperson, 9 for members of the commission, and there are certain qualities they'll be looking at. But first, I want us to talk about something that has been happening in the political space. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta spoke while in Uganda last week, and he was rallying the young people to take up their place in the political space, saying that they are the ones who can save the countries of East Africa. Watch.
You, our young people, will have to play your part in reshaping the destinies of our countries of birth, and you will help us realize that this is the moment for each and every one of you to step onto the stage. Your time has come.
Now, some political leaders have not been very happy, not comfortable actually, with what the former president is saying. They've been speaking. Watch what they've been saying.
It is under your watch ya kwamba kulikuwa na betting companies zikapewa licenses betting company 200. Wacha ku-criticize wakati wewe mwenyewe ndio umekosa. Wewe mwenyewe uko uongozi ndio umekosa.
Ukiwa retired as an MP, as a president, as an MCA, toa mdomo kwa wale ambao wako.
Alimteua mzee Mudi Yaori akiwa na miaka 91 kuwa chairman ya Sports Fund, akisema anapenda vijana. Ule ndio unafisi ambaye inafanya Yesu awezi akarudi saa hii mpaka ule mzee ya zamani Uhuru Kenyatta abadilishe mawazo yako.
Suddenly umekuwa very clever na umekuwa malaika haraka. Sasa wewe ndio unatupatia lecture kusema fanyeni maandamano, pigeni serikali. Na jana ulikuwa hapa, hata miguu yenye hata ile penye ulikanyaka ukitoka mlango ya State House haijakauka.
Mheshimiwa Koech, what is the fury about now? Because I mean, isn't everyone free to speak their mind?
Well, the Constitution has provided that liberty for people to speak, which is perfectly okay. But now when it comes to the former head of state, in my view, Uhuru Kenyatta has never recovered from William Ruto's win. He's still, he's still very upset, the fact that William Ruto is the president of this country. And he's very uncomfortable with it. By the way, if it was for Uhuru Kenyatta to decide if William Ruto should continue being the president, he probably collapse this country just for the sake of William Ruto going down. And that is why this is not the first time.
Why would you say that?
This is not the first time he's urging the youth to stand up. He actually did it immediately after the Gen Z demonstration. And it is not genuine because, as a former head of state, we should evaluate and look at his past. Did he give space to the young people of this country to thrive during his tenure? He did not. Look at his cabinet, for instance, and tell me how many in his cabinet were young people. There was one or probably none at all. Look at the other sectors of our economy. We had given an opportunity to the young people of this country. Look at what happened during his tenure. Many young people who spoke were either murdered and dumped in Rivayala, and many bad things happened to the young people of this country. For Uhuru Kenyatta today,
you know that for a fact.
Is it not an issue that so many people?
You know that for a fact that people who spoke during his tenure were killed.
That should have been the case. It is still an issue to date. And
I'm asking, people that spoke against the government were killed. You know that for a fact?
Yes, for a fact, yes.
What action
Many people were silent. Many people were silent. Look, let me not even use example, outside example. Let me use myself as a real example. President Uhuru Kenyatta moved us and shuffled many of us who were in the committees. Do you know, in the sports committee in the last parliament, we were out of the 21 members of that committee, we were 11 members from the Kalenjin community in that particular sports committee. So many things happened for people who were spoken at that time. So let me tell you.
That was Uhuru's doing.
That was Uhuru Kenyatta, of course. So let me tell you this. Uhuru Kenyatta cannot be the voice of the young people. Uhuru Kenyatta cannot be the one telling the young people to stand up for their space. The young people, not just in Kenya, globally, know their space. They speak out their issues. They don't need to be incentivized by former president. So in my view, the former president is just being a sore loser. He is still terribly hurting. And that is why every moment that he is able to speak on a podium.
Sore loser. Now, let me just take you back to what you said, that during his reign, people that spoke against the government were killed. And you know that for a fact. What has the government done to correct that and to prosecute those responsible, including the former president, if you like?
So many things are happening, Sam. First of all, you must have the investigation watertight. When the president came in, you remember that he disbanded the team that used to do that execution. Some of the team that we are told were based in police, in Nairobi area police headquarters. Some of these things are still under investigation.
But they are known.
Amid quietly, that probably it is not publicized. But so many things are happening. There are murders that were executed that have never, ever been known how it was done. And those happened during the Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure. Yep. So Uhuru Kenyatta did not allow the young people of this country to speak. Never. Many times they were bullied. Remember, Sam, I don't know why Kenyans forget very quickly. Do you remember even, what was it called? The BBI, Building Bridges Initiative. Do you remember it was conducted in the counties? So many things people were bullied, many things were run through, and certain proposals that were not very popular were made sure that they were on the table. So Uhuru Kenyatta...
Which was defeated at the courts.
Which were defeated at the courts. Because he bullied his way, because he wanted his way, and that is exactly what Uhuru Kenyatta was. He was a dictator. Many people did not realize. He cannibalized parties, political parties, because he wanted to rule. So he cannot be the voice today that is telling the young people of this country to speak. He did not allow them to thrive during his tenure.
So when he's called to conferences, he should keep quiet?
He should not keep quiet. There's a way former heads of state handle themselves. Look for instance, Kibaki, how he handled himself when he retired. Kibaki became a counselor, sort of, and an advisor to the President Uhuru Kenyatta. That is exactly how you should carry yourself. Not permanently being seen to be, seeming to be inciting and giving very populist statements that, in effect, are extremely dangerous.
All right. Mheshimiwa Kibagendi, do you agree that the former president is speaking because he's a sore loser?
Absolutely not. And I don't find fault in what President Uhuru Kenyatta has been doing, encouraging young people to step up, not just in the political front, but across the board, in business, innovation, and even in sport. And that is what he has done across the continent. Why he gets invitations to speak is because of his outstanding performance in trying to transform this country. You know, we have a government in power that lacks legitimacy. So any little thing provokes those who are extreme beneficiaries of the oppressive regime. That is why you see my brother here, Honorable Nelson Koech, is aggrieved. Honorable Soro and all the others you saw yesterday and over the weekend are unhappy when the former president reminds Kenyans that, hey, you need to step up in every other field. For them, they only think that he's inciting young people to get into politics and to push this regime out of power. They know Kenyans don't like this government. There is no government that has been unpopular like this government is. And I can tell you...
Do you want to define what oppressive regime is?
Oppressive in the sense that, I was getting to that, when Honorable Koech here tells us that there are people who are killed and thrown into River Yala, the most recent is what we have been seeing. And the government confessed, the president confessed, whereby we've seen young people get killed. We've seen young people get abducted in broad daylight. We've seen disappearances. What can you tell us about that? We had over and today, sorry to say, I have to mention this. I know it's a different media house, but BBC will be releasing a documentary on how many Kenyans were killed and how many have disappeared in just a short period of 2 years. Remember, in 2023, during the finance bill debate, sometime between April and July, we had massive killings in especially Kisumu and Kisii. I believe you remember that. But most of us are trying to remember what happened last year. So when President Uhuru Kenyatta steps up and speaks and encourages young people to step up to the plate in various fields, the current regime and the beneficiaries of this oppression and the schemes that are organized to benefit just a few get angry that people are getting informed. That is what makes these people get the kind of anger we are seeing. And you know, Kenya is in a political crisis whereby this government is hanging on a thread, or the president is clutching on straws. Why? Because at one point, Kenyans almost brought down this government. But they keep giving excuses. It is the former deputy president. Sorry. There were interferences from organizations that they later came to start praising, like the Ford Foundation and all that. Yet, really, the issue in this country is incompetency all the way from the top. And that has come, and it is affecting service delivery. Service delivery has made young people begin agitating. And by agitating, these people in government are feeling threatened. And what I've seen from what young people, especially in Kenya, have decided is that we will wait for these people and deal with them in the ballot. Because the way they wanted it to happen was unconstitutional. And when they tried to push it, they were killed, and we know. So don't give us excuses that people are thrown in River Yala and what have you. And what did President William Ruto do then? He was in government. He was sitting in the Security Council. He should have been able to speak up. He never did. So don't give us those excuses.
All right.
Don't scapegoat. President Uhuru Kenyatta has no fault in encouraging young people to step up. And I also encourage young people, go get your IDs, go register as voters. We have to get this regime out of power.
Now, Mheshimiwa Jane Kagiri, Uhuru Kenyatta is quoted as saying you have the numbers, you have the time, and you have the energy to get involved and stay involved in governance discussions until you effect the changes you wish to see. He's also saying young leaders should embrace merit-based governance where policies serve long-term national interests. Another one, he's saying that no one is coming to save us, and as the world turns increasingly inward, the places to seek refuge are rapidly disappearing. What is the biggest problem with that?
Thanks, Sam. Sam, yesterday was the climax of the Youth Week in the PCA churches, and I attended a few of those churches, and my message to the young people was to speak up and take their positions in the society. So for that part, I would not say the former president has a problem or a mistake in saying that. However, for me, what disturbs me is why speak up when you have left? Yet when you were there, we would have expected you to speak up. I'm looking at the first page of the Daily Nation today. And if you remember some in our graph lessons in school, you just look at the gap between each graph. And the gap between His Excellency Mwai Kibaki and His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta speaks a lot for itself. We moved from 1.9 trillion to 8.6 trillion. That's an increase by 6.7 trillion. So when he's telling the young people to speak up, I would appreciate if he also added that they can do better than we all did. Because in his particular case, like now you'll hear what the greatest question I get from my constituents is, Jane, where is the money in this country? And I have to sit down with them, explain to them that we are so debt-ridden that we have to first sort out the debts that we have as a country. So even whatever is getting collected from our taxes goes into paying. And I even give them better examples of telling them, even in your own household, when you are in debt, you cut on so many things. So that is exactly what is happening to our country. So when the former president stands up and tells the young people to speak up, he's telling them to speak up in a good way, but he should also explain to them the crisis we are in are partly contributed by some of us who have been there, including himself. So those are that's the genuineness I'm seeking for, even as we tell young people to speak up. Me, as Jane Kagiri, when I tell my young people to speak up, I'm telling them also correct me where you see where I have done wrong. But let's not try and make ourselves look good and the other person look bad on the assumption that it is them who got us where we are today. I'll give you the second example, Sam. The last time I was on this show and we were discussing the president's visit, you remember me highlighting a lot about the insecurity in Laikipia County. So many of our young people were killed in his regime because of insecurity. Citizen kept bringing it here on TV. What action did he take? So when you're telling young people, speak up, please also apologize for the mistakes you did to our people. You should have stood up, given us the security that we were speaking about that day, but he didn't. So today when you come up and say things are wrong in this country, at least for Laikipia, I can say our security has been restored.
Because the government is now delivering on what it's supposed to do.
Exactly.
Now, you referenced the figures on the front page of the Daily Nation. What is the point?
No, I said, as he's telling us to speak up, let's also look at how the debt increased in his regime. From 1.9 trillion in Kibaki's regime, we moved to 8.6 trillion in Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. That said...
And from Uhuru Kenyatta?
And from Uhuru Kenyatta's regime to William Ruto's regime, we are at 11 trillion. That's an increment of around 2.4 trillion.
So is that good or bad?
Of course, Sam, for any country, we don't want to be in debt. We'd all hope for us to get
I'm asking that because, as you reference those figures, you realize that Uhuru Kenyatta accumulated debt of 0.7 trillion shillings per year. William Ruto has accumulated 0.96 trillion shillings per year. On the number line, William Ruto is accumulating at a faster rate.
And that's why some we're all in agreement. We have to speak up. Now we have to also tell our regime that we need to check on these numbers because we need to bring them down instead of allowing them to keep going up. But we cannot wait until 2032. This is one of the platforms. Even I am now made aware. To be frank, I was not aware that's what...
Shirley Mweshima, you sit in the budget committee.
Sam, I keep correcting you. This is my last week was my second meeting in the budget committee, so I can't carry the problems of all that has been in budget committee.
I'm just wondering.
Then I also need to tell you, this is the first time...
TV is the first platform.
This is the first time a Laikipian is sitting in the budget committee since independence.
Surely.
So that one I have to take pride in.
Congratulations
for that. Are some of the milestones this regime is taking up.
It's really good to hear that, good to learn that rather. But you sit in the budget committee. It cannot be that this is the only opportunity you have.
Frankly, this is the, no, this is not the only opportunity. What I'm saying is, it is not that I have started interacting.
Okay.
And I like admitting what I have done and what I haven't done.
Okay.
So that one, I admit I haven't.
Oh, all right. Now, Mheshimiwa Ndeto, leadership is about service, then responsibility and being accountable to the people. And yes, there is pertinent issues that during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, there are certain things that didn't go right. But when you hear leaders who sit in parliament, they are your colleagues in parliament, one of them is also a cabinet secretary, sits in the cabinet, fighting and attacking a former head of state and forgetting what the message is, what are Kenyans supposed to do with their leaders?
Yeah, Sam, I think what we saw over the weekend is very sad. And we have seen an extension of that, from the words that my neighbor here, Nelson, has uttered this morning. First of all, Uhuru Kenyatta is a former head of state. He's also an elder now and a statesman. And a father, I think a grandfather also. And he's playing all those roles together. So whenever he stands and urges young people to take charge of their country. And you remember he did that at a funeral in Kiambu a few months ago, and now in Uganda last week. When he stands up to urge the youth to take charge of their destiny, it is the same thing that all these leaders, whenever we go to Mashinani and we have those forums of the youth, we are all urging our young people, please take charge of your destiny, because we know in this country, we've always accused young people of this, of that. And it's time that they start now being in charge. Last year was a very, very important year for the youth in this country. For the first time, we saw a movement led by young people, armed only with a phone, a flag, and a bottle of water. And how did we respond to them? We responded to them with tanks. We responded to them with armored personnel vehicles. And all they were demanding for is good governance in this country. So I think when you hear the sort of reactions that we see happening today, it is an indicator, just like Kibagedi has said, of a government that now is feeling so threatened. You saw actually a few weeks ago, this government feeling threatened by a bunch of young girls in Nakuru. A bunch of very young schoolgirls. All they were armed with a school uniform and a few words, which resonated very well with Kenyans who feel that this country is actually headed the wrong direction. So personally, from where I sit, I echo the words of Uhuru Kenyatta, and I would also like to urge our youth, it is time, first of all, they should register as voters. We've been urging them to register as voters because the people who are going to change this country going forward, it is our young people. So when the leaders are here, bastardizing the former head of state, it is actually a self-indictment that from where we sit, or from where they sit, this regime has lost it. This regime no longer resonates with the youth. And if you ask the average youth out there to compare the regimes, you can do a simple poll, even in this station, just to ask them, how do you compare this regime and that regime? Look at the sort of opposition, look at the sort of the daily noises that this regime is facing. And instead of us introspecting and asking ourselves, and I'm saying this as a member of UDA, who sometimes feels very hurt to see that a party that we built, that we worked so hard on, now is like the enemy, all is, it's really the enemy of every Kenya.
There's no solution out of this because there are challenges.
There are solutions, but the first solution is to stop this sort of, a reactive thing is to say, what are our youth asking about? 35% of our youth who are eligible for jobs are actually out of work, okay? Our university funding model, which is what is supposed to shape the future of this country, is actually in tatters. The CBC curriculum, right now we cannot even agree on even all the basic things of, how the senior school is going to be. People are still waiting for guidelines. Some, I can tell you today, the ministry has not even released guidelines on how JSS laboratories are supposed to be built and equipped. Yet, it's been 3 years, Now we have grade 9 of JSS, okay? If you look at, you know, the things like the public health, there are so many issues. So instead of us addressing the issues, what we are doing is every day coming out with tanks, with harsh words, with all the things to defend and basically try and repress the youth. So it is time that our UDA government started listening to Kenyans. And I think that's all our Gen Zs were saying last year. That is what the Butere girls' children were telling us. And that is what we should be telling ourselves this morning as leaders who are aligned to UDA, that it is time we start listening to our people. Otherwise, our government is going to lose very early in the morning on August 2027.
Would you have a problem with that?
Well, these are self-inflicted wounds, but we have a chance to redeem ourselves.
Would you have a problem with your government losing?
Of course, I would have a problem with that, but I would also be very happy if we got a better government.
No, what are you saying? You said something very interesting, that the Butere girls were armed in a school uniform in a few words. Let's take a break on that.
And we came out with tear gas and all manner of things, and guns.
When we come back, we'll be looking for solutions out of this, because it looks like beneath the disagreement, there's something sensible that is coming out of all these conversations. Stay tuned.